Namaskar, Ashok Vyas, and there are many good things that happen in one's life. One of them happens to be when you have someone who has sincerely learnt life in its totality and pursued his interest sincerely. So there is this subtle side of life, and there is that which, in traditional terminology, we say stool side of life, and who has been bestowed with material success and spiritual understanding. When you come across someone like that, and that happens to be Kiran Khalap ji, not just known as a successful CEO, but more also as an author and also known for his love for nature. So I'm delighted that I have the benefit of someone with such good nature to be joining me from India. Namaste, welcome, Kiran ji.
नमस्कार नमस्कार थैंक यू बहुत
तो
बहुत शुक्रिया
अरे तो किरण जी, ये हमारी बातचीत थोड़ी इनफॉर्मल तरह से शुरू और हो सकता है इनफॉर्मल ही रहे। तो लेट मी बिगिन बाय
श्योर श्योर
आस्किंग यू कि जो हम कहते हैं फॉर्मल और इनफॉर्मल, तो क्रिएटिविटी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से आपको क्या लगता है कि फॉर्मल होने में जो हमारा क्रिएटिव मैनिफेस्टेशन है वो कहीं रेस्ट्रिक्ट हो जाता है, या सो हाउ डू यू सी ओवरऑल दीज टू साइड वेयर वन यू आर offering your polished face to the world, another you are true to yourself the way you are.
so it's the context within which that creativity is being deployed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. The person who, after my father, the person who influenced me the most, J Krishnamurti, he believed that you should stay within the context, you should not stand out. So when he went to Europe, he would dress like Europeans would. When he came to India, he would dress like Indians would. That was the context. So he felt that in a formal context, I should not stand out necessarily. There could be other people who would say that no, there is only one way in which I live. I want to be in jeans and t-shirt, whatever happens. So if you take Steve Jobs and his famous blue jeans and uh, dark sweatshirt, the round neck, he had several pairs of that. And wherever he was, formal or informal, that is the way he appeared. So the simple way of thinking about it is creativity has no uniform.
Creativity has no uniform, and yet creativity means uniform, especially if you're talking to CEO of Chlorophyll. In fact, branding is a kind of uniform and sustainable uniform, recognizable uniform. So here, the flow of creativity is following certain patterns, certain structure, and trying to fill in certain expectations. So, do you see any 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 contradiction about?
Contradiction. That Ashokji is only if we restrict the meaning of creativity.
Correct.
So what has happened is that the meaning of creativity or innovation has been restricted to problem solving. But problem solving is only one uh, role that creativity can play. So how to build a bridge from here to there when there is a big river, that's a problem that you're going to solve. You will use creativity there. The engineer will use creativity. But creativity is also self-expression, right? So self-expression, um, some artist goes away to Tahiti and paints by himself in a hut. We created a brochure for an artist called Montanari in Italy, who for 16 years, from 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening, either painted, wrote poetry, or created sculpture in his own house. Nobody saw it. That's self-expression, right? He did not need an audience. In the case of problem solution, you're doing it for somebody. Now, in the case of self-expression, and then if we come to my favorite subject and we extend the meaning of creativity, because the best definition of creativity that I've heard is by a French philosopher and a paleontologist, and that is to create is to unite. So creativity brings things together. Sperm and egg come together, and you get a totally new thing called a baby. So, or at an idea level, you get one frame of reference, second frame of reference, you get a totally new frame of reference. So the highest form of creativity is where your individual consciousness is joined to a universal consciousness. That would be a higher form of creativity. So if you restrict creativity to only problem solving, yes, you would have to say formal, informal, no. But if you expand the meaning of creativity, you will get many more dimensions.
So I was smiling because I felt like clapping a couple of times, and I think there is this freshness about your thinking, and I think there is some
Thank you.
creative thinking which is what making Kiran Khalap who he is. And you brought out two important points. Of course, every point was important, but where I felt like jumping, one was we restrict creativity to problem solving, and I think that is what the structure of market forces
Yes.
brings to play. And so we start forgetting that another important idea which I want to repeat and underline is that that which unites is creative. And
Correct.
so this is beautiful. Now we will go to some stairs in your memory lane when you felt that you became a medium, so to say, either for yourself or wherever it was, where you felt that unifying aspect of your creativity uh, got expressed.
So even when I was a school teacher for 4 years, between 1979 and 1983, I was a school teacher. I was a housemaster. I think the creativity there came in terms of behavior. It is not necessarily in terms of communication or necessarily in terms of drawing or painting or self-expression. The behavior of between me and my students, uh, there was very little division between us. So there was a kind of closeness that happened. There were 300 students in that school, and quite a few of them either learned calligraphic handwriting from me, somebody learned gymnastics from me, somebody learned judo from me, some learned swimming, some learned how to use uh, 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 a way to a film projector. Now, all of those things, when we were doing together, there was no distance, there was no separation like I'm a teacher, you have to look up to me, you must do this, you must do that, maintain this distance. So that was an expression of no distance. That was an expression of bringing things together. So
That's
bringing
beautiful.
things together.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, sorry. So I would let you continue, but I just wanted to express my call it a surprise or not just surprise. Surprise is very simple a word. So I mean it is incomprehensible to conceive of someone like Kiran Kalap, uh, all the different genres of art as well as maybe judo or whatever you mentioned you taught them, that is one aspect, but now I go further back. How did you learn all that? You were, I think you were only I mean you just were out of your teenage. I think you were 17, 18, right after graduation you went to teach there and you were there for 4 years
Yes.
in Varanasi. So where did you learn all this? Where did you get time and inclination?
I think one of the concepts we should bring here is what is called as genetic lottery. So you can choose your friends, you can choose your wife, you can choose not to have children or have children, but you can't choose your parents, right?
Correct.
And my sister and I, there are only two of us. I think we were blessed by an incredible set of parents. Both of them were self-taught. My father had studied only till class 7 in a Marathi medium school. My mother had studied only till class 4 in a Marathi medium school in a village. But when I was aware of them, my father could speak and write chaste English because he knew that that was a doorway to a different future. So he had learned English by buying a dictionary, by watching um English films, by listening to conversations of people who were speaking English. He taught himself art. He became one of India's best commercial artists, and he got a job in metal box.
Wow.
And the same thing that happened to the school principal happened to his boss. So the boss asked him, "Okay, this is fabulous work," because he did showed them how to do airbrushing, and they had never seen airbrushing done with that finesse. And he said, "Okay, just bring your certificate for formality's sake, and you are on." And he said, "What certificate?" "I don't have a certificate. I haven't been to art school. It's all self-taught." Which is the same thing that the school principal asked me when I reached. I was 20, and he said, "Okay, you have come here because you are saying that you want to contribute to this noble cause because you believe that education can change society. All of that is fine, but where's your certificate?" I said, "I have no certificate. I went away, more or less ran away from home the day my exams got over, day before yesterday. So the certificate will come later." So in a way, my mother, for instance, despite being class 4, she was a voracious reader. Both of them were readers. So I got the this entire thing. My sister and I, we became voracious readers. I would take up one author and finish all his books. That's the way I would read books. Of course, it was more English, but our spoken language at home was Marathi. Well, my father was from Goa, my mother was from Konkan. So one part of this ability to draw, for instance, or the ability to do calligraphy. So what would happen is my father would work in metal works, but for additional income, he would do freelance work at home. And I would come back from school before he returned from the office, and he had taught me how to fill in basic colors. So if you want to have a fair person, you mix orange and chrome yellow and white, and you fill in the face. If you want a dark person, you take burnt sienna and white, and you put it. So I would fill in those colors. So I learned the art or drawing or calligraphy at that stage when I was 10 or 12. So that is one part of it. The second part is then he kind of responded and said, "Oh my God, this guy is becoming a bookworm, and this is not right. He needs to be strong and muscular and this and that." So he put me into a gymnasium, what is called as a Vyayam Shala in
Mhm.
Marathi, where I learned yoga, malkham, gymnastics. Then, as I grew up, then when I was about to join college, we had 3 months of uh, holidays. So I went and learned judo. So that is how everything happened. So, for instance, there was a program called Outward Bound program. I think created somewhere in the UK. There was one trip in India that was happening, which was along the coast. So my father pushed me into it, where they would throw you into the open sea and let you experience how to how to swim in the open sea. So these are things he himself, when he was young, had done a lot of working out and all of that. So this is the genetic lottery bit. So there are tons of stuff which has come down through the genes.
So I'm so happy that we are talking to someone who got the genetic lottery. And everybody has a genetic lottery, that's why you are a human being. But indeed, there are some differences and variations
Yes,
in terms of the way you would act like a sponge in absorbing knowledge if
correct,
you're
correct.
and willing. So that you were there is quite evident. Now, another question: you in your journey at 20 decided to go and support this organization. You were the only son, as far as I know. There was a sister. So typically, parents have certain expectations that my son should either earn this much or should become and follow this path. So, was there any conversation of that kind with your father? Was there any expectation that he kind of showed he had for you?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. So, like all middle class people, you either become an engineer or a doctor. So I was qualified. I could have got into medicine, but I told him this, that look, I'm really deeply influenced by this gentleman, J. Krishnamurti. I realize what he's saying is important, that instead of trying to change people when they are grown up, instead of making them monks, it is simpler if you, at when the child is young, if you teach the child to learn about himself, to learn about his emotions, to learn about nature, to learn about what it means to be a holistic human being. And if you did that, that would change society. So I resonate with this, and therefore I want to go out and. Of course, he was disappointed, but he was also a very evolved human being. By the second year, after 1 year, after lots of relatives asked what has happened to him, has he become a missionary and all of that, he laughed at all of that. And he came there. He came there with my mom, my sister, and we stayed there. We went all over North India. So, and after he passed away young, he was 60. Um, One of his friends came to me and he said, I want to tell you a story. And I said, what is it? He said, your father knew that your friends had started experimenting with ganja and alcohol. And I asked your father, weren't you worried? And your father told me that, why don't you think positive? Maybe Kiran's influence will actually change them instead of their influence in changing Kiran. So that's the way he was. He was phenomenally positive. And the other thing he had always said, which is something which people say it, but they won't live up to it, that whatever you do in life, you do well. So finally he said, okay, teacher to teacher, I trust you. I know that. So when he got Parkinson's and my mother had cancer, then I also felt that it was not right for me. My poor sister suffered a lot. So I had to come back. And I guess he knew that I would not give up that responsibility. So I did come back. But those were 4 magical years.
So I see you on many levels in one moment now, and I want also to request you to open up on few more levels. One, share name of your father with our viewers, or rather, I would like to learn that, and also in terms of when you look back, the transition that happened in your life after coming back is another journey, but being there was something as an extension of the way you started understanding J. Krishnamurti. So, if you care to share, what was the triggering point, or why you felt what you felt, a sense of deep gratefulness for J. Krishnamurti, and I'm sure you studied a lot before that.
Yes, exactly. So the sense of gratefulness came from the kind of clarity that he brought to my life. So I often say that people ask big questions about what is the meaning of life, what is reality, what is truth. Very often it is triggered by some tragedy. You lose somebody close to you, or you lose your job, or you have some tragedy in your life. And there are some few people who have that question intrinsically. So I always had that intrinsic question of what is truth, what is reality. Even when I was a teenager, I had read Jean-Paul Sartre, I had read Immanuel Kant. I had a cousin who worked in Bombay University, so using his influence, I got the Upanishads out. I read the Upanishads. None of it made sense. It was all very confusing. The language was confusing. There was a superstructure of thought that my mind couldn't cope with. So that was all very disappointing until I read a book called Talks and Dialogues by J. Krishnamurti. And I said, my God, there is no superstructure. There is no dogma. There is no multiple levels of meaning that you have to go through. It is plain language and it's like knife. It just cuts straight into you and says, listen. So many years later, somebody said, uh, uh, in how many words can you condense Krishnamurti? Can you put it in a sentence? I said, no, I can put it in 2 words. And said, what is that? I said, thought divides. So
Thought
that
divides.
clarity, thought divides. It is the division between you and somebody else, I versus the universe, mine versus somebody else's. That is created by thought. It's actually not there. And it's very scary when people are told that, if you want, please examining this sense of self, when what you call I is only a bunch of memories. It scares people that it's only a bunch of memories. Now that clarity that I got was life changing. So my entire life became very orderly. Most of the negative things that one goes through in life, simple things like boredom, anger, frustration, those lessened. Of course, I'm not free of any of those, but those lessened a lot, and the entire positivity in life grew dramatically. So
So
that was the reason why.
yeah. So allow me to sort of add something to this aspect of our quest as human beings, and I think
Yes.
some people get it from here, some people get it from there, and there is no one way. So what you just said reminded me of many people having felt similarly for Swami Vivekananda's literature. Personally, also, I found that he was helpful through his literature or lectures to clarify some of the doubts. But it might not have been as crystal clear as happened for you. It might be the case with someone else. So then someone reads Gita, but with commentary or hears about if I say, the concept of life as is shared by Lord Krishna with Arjun, he gets clarity. So there could be various permutation combination, but we are talking about Kiran Khalap's journey right now. So I'm not taking away what you said. I just wanted to bring that on the table, just to
So
make a point that
yeah.
yeah.
So Ashokji, that is correct. So the simple way of looking at it, and which is something which has been touched upon not just in our literature, in the Indian philosophical texts, but also in the Western psychological texts. So there is you are born with a psychosomatic constitution. Your mind body constitution is of a particular type. So
Hmm.
in Ayurveda, you have Vat, Pitta, Kapha. Now each one of them has a particular mental makeup. Or you have Jnana Marg,
Bhakti
Bhakti
Marg.
Marg, and Karma Marg. So in Western literature, you have uh, viscerotonic, somatotonic, and uh, viscerotonic and cerebrotonic.
Hmm.
Now, a cerebrotonic person who will choose a Jnana Marg, she is going to think through life's problems. This kind of person will not enjoy following somebody.
Hmm.
But a person who is following Bhakti Marg, who is a viscerotonic person who works through her gut level intuition, they will follow people. That's their natural tendency. Similarly, when you think about the last one, which is Karma Marga, there are people who want to do things. They don't want to think so much. They don't want to feel so much. They'll say, okay, tell me what it is.
What is to be
Chalo,
done?
jaake karo.
Ah.
Karma. So these are your natural tendencies. And that's why many people, when they say, we had a professor in college and her mother was a follower of Jnaneshwar. And she had a beautiful quip when I told her that I was, I'm planning to work with Krishnamurti. He said, he's not Krishnamurti, he's Prashnamurti. वो खाली he only asks question. He doesn't provide answer. Now that can be unsettling to some people. So there will be only a particular kind of person who would enjoy that.
Okay, so staying at this pace, and I'm also reminded of Bhagwan Raman Maharshi, and Raman
Yes,
Maharshi's core teaching is "Who am I?" And
correct.
so whether you go towards Swami Vivekananda, in one quote probably he says that you are not mind, you are not thought, and the similar way contemplation on self as was practiced at Raman Ashram and was inspired by him also takes you away from thoughts. And yet we deal with thoughts, and in fact what we are doing right now is exchange of thoughts. So thoughts would be angry with us that what are you guys doing? So that's just a funny thought. But now continuing with the few more memories of the days which were very significant in your life experience. One, I look at that decision as very very significant one, which tells me the difference between Kiran Khalap and many people is if he was convinced and he had commitment, he had the courage to pursue that, and he was not scared of doing that. So it was not a lukewarm love affair in your case, it was total 100%. And I think that you got part from your genetics. Genetics. But I know I'm kind of delving here a little bit more, but was there any double minded side of Kiran at that point? No.
Zero. मैंने इतना सोचा नहीं था. We did. I did not think what salary. So that was what was happened at the railway station. So my father, my mother, and my sister were there, and they said, "So how much are they going to pay you?" I said, "I don't know." What are you going to teach? I don't know. Where will you stay? I don't know. In fact, that was the first time I was traveling outside Maharashtra.
Uh-huh.
And I knew that I had to get off at a station called Mughal Sarai. And from there, I would reach Rajghat for 2 rupees in a rickshaw. That's exactly what happened. I had no clue what was going to happen. But it is, I think, when you're at that age, there is something like a junoon. You know, you are completely sucked up by that idea. You're really, there was no, the exact question that you asked, there was no, it was choiceless. It wasn't that ye karu ki wo karu. There was only one thing that was to be done. What would happen in the future, or how much would I make, what would happen, would I become headmaster? Yes, sir. Nothing. There was zero thought of that.
So there was sense of purity, if I say that, and also the sense of adventurous spirit without having that label makes life interesting and makes people who they become, as in the case of Kiranji. Now, not taking much of your time in Varanasi, yet the place is beautiful. It is serene, and there is something about tradition of Varanasi, and what J. Krishnamurti was offering was a different paradigm to move or rather to realize truth. So, if we learn from you a little bit about your understanding of these, I'll just say concept or terms like truth, God, life in totality, in the context of what you felt was clear to you through one book of J. Krishnamurti ji.
So if you, when at, I think at age 28 is when he had his enlightenment. And they had created something called um, the Order of the Star. There were close to 43,000 people, because this is what was written in the theosophical books, that there will be a world master, a world teacher who would come, and he would give the truth, and all you 43,000 people will take the truth around the world. That was how it was written down. And when he went on stage, and exactly what you're asking now, when he went on stage and he said, truth is a pathless land. It's a beautiful statement. And he said, therefore, nobody can take you there. And therefore, I'm disbanding the Order of the Star. So you can imagine the enormity of that act, that there is nobody who can be a disciple, nobody can be a follower, nobody can become a teacher. You are your own teacher. And truth is a pathless land. So if you look at, whether you look at the traditional stuff in Banaras, last time we met, I was reading from my book for you
Yes, yes.
in 2007.
Mm.
So the famous shloka by uh, Shankaracharya, which is called Atmashatakam, Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chittani Naham Nacha Shrotra Jivde Nacha Grahana Netri Nacha Vyoma Bhumir Na Tejo Na Vayu Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. That anyway points in this direction.
Yes.
By around 2003, 2004, I started doing Vipassana. And in a way, Krishnamurti used to be called the second Buddha. And there were a lot of Buddhists, therefore, who came to meet him. And they found tremendous similarity between what he was saying and how he was explaining, and how the Buddha was explaining. So the Buddha also said, you follow your own common sense. Don't listen to anybody. If you can experience it, that is reality. So that is where I, my understanding of Krishnamurti then and now, there is a lot of difference, because I have experienced many things which I hadn't experienced there. So the whole idea that there is something called experience which you can experience through your senses, and there is something called a thought or an idea which exists only inside your head. And the most frightening thought is that we keep using the word I, but the word I represents an idea which is just inside your head. It has, you cannot experience it. If I ask you to show me I, or can you hear I, the answer is no. So it's not reality as other reality is. So it, at a particular level, it all comes to the same thing. All those paths will. I have a friend, Guru Prasad, who sends me every morning. He sends me the quotes of 4 saints. One is of Ramana Maharshi, one is of the saint of Kanchi. Um, there was a gentleman whom I met, Nisargadatta Maharaj. He
Yes.
used to be called Bidi Baba.
Yes.
I had the good fortune of meeting him also. And if you look at all those 4 quotes, they're roughly the same thing, saying that until you keep quiet and keep silent and allow your own awareness uh, to grow, you will not see, you will not experience what is beyond thought. So at a particular place, all these paths merge.
So, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, that one is reminded
Correct.
of. And now, let me, as we were saying, it's little informal. So, for those of you who are with us right now, um, we consider you as an extension of ourselves. And that is why there is this sense of oneness which one feels while listening to Kiran Khalap ji. And I met him in New York, and the book was probably called Halfway Up the Mountain.
Correct.
It was the launch, and so it's a very intense book. And I'm jumping to the author side of Kiran ji, and then there are other sides that we will come to. Writing again is a very important, and it uh, it is 100% affair with your characters, your book, flow of story, etc. And while we will talk about your side as brand guru later, but uh, dealing with corporate people, interacting with them, and usual when you have so much connection with life on various fronts, then becoming a writer also, was that dream sleeping somewhere in the back of your mind? How book writing came about?
Oh, that also is part of that lottery. So I was, I had tremendous facility with words. So it is a gift. It is. I don't think of it as something that I do. I think of it as something that happens through me. Sometimes when I open a book which I've written and I read it and I said, my God, I don't know how I wrote that, right? Because that sentence construct, there are two or three layers. Incidentally, Ashokji, my third book came out this
Wow.
June, last June.
What it is called?
It's called Black River Run. So the first one was Halfway Up the Mountain. The second is called Two Pronouns and a Verb.
Please
And
repeat
this
the
one is,
second name. Please repeat.
second is called Two Pronouns and a Verb. Two pronouns and a verb means I love you, he hates her, she loves him. These are all two pronouns and a verb.
Hmm.
But who am I is also two pronouns and a verb. So that book uses this entire idea of Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, you have three different psychosomatic types, three prakritis. So there are three friends, two boys and a girl, and they all belong to different prakritis. And as they move through life, they experience the same reality differently because they are made differently. And then what happens towards the end of their life. So that is two pronouns and a verb. And this one is called Black River Run. Black River is the is a tar road, and Black River Run is the story of a cab driver
I see.
who goes up and down the tar road. So he follows Swami Samartha Ramdas. He wants to live like him, but since he's in Mumbai, he gets sucked into all kinds of things in gang wars, and finally even gets into gets arrested for murder. So this book is shorter. It's the shortest of my three books, and much more. So I'm hoping somebody is going to take interest and make it into a film because it has a lot of uh, that kind of stuff in it.
So, when I say so and then I smile, because I get like 10 questions and then I have to pick which one to go with right now. So, the one that I'm going with right now relates to partly the recent book you mentioned and a little bit faint memory of your first book that I have. Uh, just again, in terms of the pattern, when you look at an author with meditations background and with interest in spiritual side of life, you would think the book would be easy read, or it would lead you to a continuity of a sense of your inner harmony. But I think you shock your readers like me who put this expectation, because your characters do experience the harsh side of life, or
Yeah.
they also have certain complicated way of looking at themselves and all that. So that intensity in your characters, which is not one-sided, it is conscious, or do you consider problem in life and challenges on not just physical level but intellectual, emotional level as an integral part of what you want to convey through the book?
That's a lovely question. So I have in each of these books, it ends on a positive note. So they find the solution. So in the first book, this young girl who has been abandoned by her father, she has been taught this shloka about Shankaracharya, and over time that becomes a guiding light for her, and she starts understanding the meaning of what it is to live like this. In the second book, it is to do with Ayurveda, and Ayurveda also is a big science of life, and therefore uh, the three characters start learning about themselves through that. And in this one, he's guided by Swami Samartha Ramdas's book called Das Board. So these are all characters in all the books. It doesn't end in negativity. It doesn't end in uh, tragedy. They are all very positive endings. There are people you have to discover. So this, what I mentioned earlier, that you have to experience reality. You can't have a concept about reality. So if you take our two great leaders, if you take Mahatma Gandhi and Baba Sahib Ambedkar, Gandhiji experienced the uh, unfairness of being brown in a white country, but he did not experience being of a lower caste in our country. While Baba Sahib Ambedkar experienced the ignominy and the insult of being a lower caste in our country. Those are experiences that they had, and therefore you will see that their approaches to those two problems of being unequal because of your color and being unequal because of your caste are different.
Um, Now, as I was telling you, I get 10 questions. Sometimes after you hear Kiran, you stop thinking about the questions. You just want to understand what did he, what did he say. So that intensity, I think, is the hallmark of someone who has been sincere to understanding life. Kiranji, your own life, it was challenging phase when you came back from Varanasi, as you mentioned, the condition at home. So how did you take it? And now your journey towards establishing chlorophyll or all the professional success that you have, uh, it must have been quite a difficult journey, if I say, for the lack of better word.
See, I think difficult or trouble or whatever happens when at any given point in time you say, this is not what should happen to me. When I tell my friends that when you say boredom because you're saying, I'm bored because this is not what I should be doing right now. I should be doing something else. That's boredom. Or you're saying that I'm unsuccessful because I always wanted a large car, but I don't have it. That's unsuccessful. But if you don't have these concepts, then you're able to be far more free in the way you live. So when I came back, I had a simple goal. I didn't want a large flat or a big car, and thankfully, the person I married is very, very similar in her thinking. My goal was very simple, that I must make sure that my father and my mother have the best medical attention available in India. That's all that I had thought of. So there was a choice because I could write well. There was a choice between joining journalism and joining advertising. But because I was trained by my father in art, I thought it was advertising would better utilize my talent because I could write as well as visualize. That's how I joined advertising. But the whole thing that I told my big boss that point in time, Alec Padamsi, was, look, I'm joined this for this simple purpose, that I have to look after my parents' illnesses. So I don't mind you giving me anything to do so long as that purpose is served. So it was a very simple thing, right? Then we ended when he passed away. After that, I joined another agency to have called Clarion, and I ended up being the CEO of that agency. And didn't just remain in the creative field. I became a CEO. I went into management, and I got exposed to the agency life globally. And there is a way in which it operates. And that way was not something that I enjoyed. So I said, okay, let me start something on my own. And if I start something on my own, then it must have its own value systems. It must have its own reason why to exist. It must the community must be built in a certain way. So that is what has happened from 1999 to now to 2020. 20 years have passed with
Wow.
Chlorophyll.
So 20 years, long time, but time is always short when you sit with Kiranji.
Yeah,
And I think you have some other things to catch up. But lastly, I would like you to, for this session, share with us. Like Padamsee is also considered as a guru of a sort in the field of advertising. And was there something which you felt you imbibed observing him or learned from him? So I think that could be the last question, but I would just add a smaller one, which is uh, getting zeroing down to the name chlorophyll for your own company when you started.
right. So when we started, let me do the chlorophyll one first. When we started in 99, there were not too many pure brand consultancies. There were lots of very highly award winning designers who had started design companies, and they did the identity work for brands. But the way we thought of uh, brands was not just about identity. So there are a lot of work that we have done where the output is not a design, the output is actually a brand strategy, right? So we saw ourselves as very different, and therefore we said, okay, then we should practice what we preach, right? So what we were preaching was that you should have one idea of your brand, and then your name, your logo, your behavior, your business model, everything should follow that, what that core idea is or those core values are. So in our case, we had done put down three values. One was efficiency, because we also always wanted to be small. So even after 20 years, we are just 27 people. We also, the heart of any strategy or any creative work is creativity. And finally, we wanted to make sure that we did not draw attention to ourselves, that our work spoke for us. So the first name we thought of was Salt, because salt is very efficient. A little bit here and there, and husband and wife or husband and cook will start fighting.
Yeah.
Uh, but salt is not very creative. It does not create new things.
Hmm.
And since I had done organic chemistry in college, I thought of chlorophyll because it's supposed to be one of the most efficient molecules on earth. Even a single photon that lands on the leaf will start the photosynthesis process. And it's creative because it combines carbon dioxide and water and creates life. It creates food. And yet nobody remembers it. Like I keep joking when I go for my college and school reunion, they think that because I did chemistry, they said, "हाँ ये देखो किरण आया है, he makes chloroform," because they've forgotten chlorophyll. So that's the chlorophyll story. Alec Padamsee, when he passed away, I think last year, I wrote about him quite a lot. The big thing was Alec's background was theatre, and therefore Alec was a great believer in practicing. I remember in Delhi once at 2 in the morning, he saw the campaign that we were presenting to the Indian government. And he said, okay, this campaign is done. Now let me go and practice. So at 2 in the morning, he was practicing it. So the phrase we had was, there is no replay in real life. It's not a video button that you can press and have a replay. So you have to practice, practice, practice. Recently, for instance, I was told that Steve Jobs, when he used to make those fabulous speeches, he would practice the speech 50 times. So the whole idea of not making an error. Alec had a board in his room which says professionalism means never having to say sorry.
Wow.
Because in a professional, you don't make errors. You have practiced that thing so well that you don't make errors at all.
And I am kind of just now debating whether I should say sorry or not. But but I think I I should say sorry to myself for not practicing. Many and it might lead to another question, but you may touch, you may leave it. See, sometimes too much practice takes away the joy of spontaneity. And I think creativity lies in a balance between the two. So you know the tools and the rules, but you have enough open space to play around.
Correct, correct. But what when you practice, it sets you free because you know your material, you have it by heart, you understood the highs and lows. But because you have that certainty at the back of your mind, you can be spontaneous. That's exactly what happens.
Wonderful. So now let me be spontaneous and a little bit, I take the liberty. The last memory which I had of Kiranji was a different appearance. appearance.
There was hair on the head.
So one, I want to acknowledge and thank Beer Biceps. These are the young kids, and they made a program.
Ranveer, one
Ranveer.
kid, Ranveer Allahabad.
Okay. Ranveer is a very talented and a bright kid. I think
It's
there was a passion the way he presented the narration, and I thought, is it the same Kiran Khalap who I had met once? So then I did some Google and my emails, and I kind of connected with you. And I want to thank you very much for responding positively and giving me the opportunity to.
my pleasure, my pleasure.
And I also informally would like to say that nowadays there are many monk-like corporate monks uh, who are like you. There is one Robin Sharma, you might have read him from
Yes, yes.
Canada. Yeah, the monk who sold his Ferrari, the book he wrote. So on that, it is always a pleasure to be around someone who who is beyond thoughts or who has touched that space which takes us beyond thought, and that is where you can have a sense of freedom and the joy, and the expansion evolves on its own, I think, when you have that approach, and you are truthful also. So, Kiranji, as I thank you, I cannot but help notice the picture that you have behind you. I think it speaks also about the philosophy of your life. A small creature or a small boy can tame such a big elephant. You want to say something about this? Uh,
This is in New York. It's in your city. This exhibition was famous.
I see.
It's called, I think, Ashes. It's called Ashes, Ashes and Snow.
Oh, wow.
A very famous photographer called Gregory Colbert.
I see. I see.
Yeah, I think it was around 2008 or around that time. So it's beautiful. All his pictures are like this.
Very good. So, time up, as they say. And I would like to sit with Kiranji next time. We'll talk about maths of success, because if there is a maths to success or there is no maths, that you realize down the line when you talk about zero ambition but purpose-driven life, and how that purpose and that clarity can become a part of others. We'll probably try to learn from you next time. Kiranji, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, friendship sometimes exists without any communication. I would say that kind of friendship I share with with Kiran. Kiran is, thank you very much. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
So, thanking Kiranji and thanking all of you for being with us.
Thank you.
विवेक वाणी। उठो जागो और तब तक रुको नहीं जब तक मंजिल प्राप्त न हो जाए। जो सत्य है उसे साहसपूर्वक निर्भीक होकर लोगों से कहो। उससे किसी को कष्ट होता है या नहीं, इस ओर ध्यान मत दो। दुर्बलता को कभी प्रश्रय मत दो। सत्य की ज्योति बुद्धिमान मनुष्यों के लिए यदि अत्यधिक मात्रा में प्रखर प्रतीत होती है और उन्हें बहा ले जाती है तो ले जाने दो, वे जितना शीघ्र बह जाएं उतना अच्छा ही है। तुम अपनी अंतस्थ आत्मा को छोड़ किसी और के सामने सिर मत झुकाओ। जब तक तुम यह अनुभव नहीं करते कि तुम स्वयं देवों के देव हो, तब तक तुम मुक्त नहीं हो सकते। ईश्वर ही ईश्वर की उपलब्धि करवा सकता है। सभी जीवंत ईश्वर हैं, इस भाव से सबको देखो। मनुष्य का अध्ययन करो। मनुष्य ही जीवंत काव्य है। जगत में जितने ईसा या बुद्ध हुए हैं, सभी हमारी ज्योति से ज्योतिष्मान हैं। इस ज्योति को छोड़ देने पर ये सब हमारे लिए और अधिक जीवित नहीं रह सकेंगे, मर जाएंगे। तुम अपनी आत्मा के ऊपर स्थिर रहो। मानव देह ही सर्वश्रेष्ठ देह है एवं मनुष्य ही सर्वोच्च प्राणी है, क्योंकि इस मानव देह तथा इस जन्म में ही हम इस सापेक्षित जगत से संपूर्णतया बाहर हो सकते हैं, निश्चय ही मुक्ति की अवस्था प्राप्त कर सकते हैं, और यह मुक्ति ही हमारा चरम लक्ष्य है। जो मनुष्य इस जन्म में मुक्ति प्राप्त करना चाहता है, उसे एक ही जन्म में हजारों वर्ष का काम करना पड़ेगा। वो जिस युग में जन्मा है उससे उसे बहुत आगे जाना पड़ेगा, किंतु साधारण लोग किसी तरह रेंगते रेंगते ही आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। जो महापुरुष प्रचार कार्य के लिए अपना जीवन समर्पित कर देते हैं, वे उन महापुरुषों की तुलना में अपेक्षाकृत अपूर्ण हैं जो मौन रहकर पवित्र जीवन यापन करते हैं और श्रेष्ठ विचारों का चिंतन करते हुए जगत की सहायता करते हैं। इन सभी महापुरुषों में एक के बाद एक दूसरे का आविर्भाव होता है। अंत में उनकी शक्ति का चरम फलस्वरूप ऐसा कोई शक्ति संपन्न पुरुष आविर्भूत होता है जो जगत को शिक्षा प्रदान करता है। मुक्ति लाभ के अतिरिक्त और कौन सी उच्च अवस्था का लाभ किया जा सकता है? देवदूत कभी कोई बुरे कार्य नहीं करते, इसलिए उन्हें कभी दंड भी प्राप्त नहीं होता, अतः वे मुक्त भी नहीं हो सकते। सांसारिक धक्का ही हमें जगा देता है, वही इस जगत स्वप्न को भंग करने में सहायता पहुंचाता है। इस प्रकार के लगातार आघात ही इस संसार से छुटकारा पाने की अर्थात मुक्ति लाभ करने की हमारी आकांक्षा को जागृत करते हैं। मन का विकास करो और उसका संयम करो। उसके बाद जहां इच्छा हो वहां इसका प्रयोग करो, उससे अति शीघ्र फल प्राप्ति होगी। यह है यथार्थ आत्मोन्नति का उपाय। एकाग्रता सीखो और जिस ओर इच्छा हो उसका प्रयोग करो। ऐसा करने पर तुम्हें कुछ खोना नहीं पड़ेगा। जो समस्त को प्राप्त करता है वो अंश को भी प्राप्त कर सकता है।